Hi Lakers, Mr. Ream here. I'm going to give you a quick tutorial, an introduction that you'll be practicing today to a program that we use here at North Tahoe High School called SCOIR, SCOIR, not SCOIR, it's SCOIR. And if you are in a place where you remember Naviance, this program replaces Naviance historically, and it's a tool that we can use to investigate, explore, and find opportunities related to college and career especially, but also some self-exploration tools as well. So today I'm actually just going to give you a quick overview, have you do a couple things. So in this video, and teachers, if you're in the room, I hope, if I ask you to pause or if you need additional time, I might put a timer on the screen to give students a little bit of time to do something. If you need additional time once that timer is up, feel free to hit the pause button on this video and then resume as soon as you're ready. But basically, to access SCOIR for students, every student at North Tahoe High School does have an account already. Some students may have already accessed it, and if so, great. If not, and this is your first time accessing SCOIR, there's two primary ways to log into SCOIR. One of them, in terms of accessing the link that you need to go to access SCOIR, is to log in with Clever. So if you don't have your Chromebook out at this point, take 1 minute. I'm going to put a timer on the screen for a minute. Take 1 minute and please get your Chromebook out or a device that you use to access the internet and things like Google Classroom. And then go log into your Clever account. So using your TTUSD email. And then on Clever, you'll see a link to SCOIR. If you don't have that, or if you can't access it, or it's not working for some reason, what you can do is also go up here to app.scoir.com/sign-in. And that'll bring you to a page that looks like this. So take just a minute, get that device out, get loaded up, and then what you're going to do is either you're going to be using this login with Google button or login with Clever button. Okay, so go ahead and do that now. So you should be able to access SCOIR from Clever, and once you do that, you're going to go ahead and log in. I'm going to go ahead and do that with my pretend account here. It's actually my son, but ultimately what you can see on the screen is you probably will get prompted to apply with SCOIR. This pops up because this is a relatively new feature of SCOIR. You can go ahead and hit the X at the top, and this will be taking you to the home page. Okay, so if anything pops up, feel free to read through some of that stuff, but generally speaking, usually you're going to get taken straight to this home page. And this is going to be the page that pops up each time that you log in. And there's a couple key areas of SCOIR that I want to point out with our time today. And for a couple of those things, I'm actually going to have you do a couple activities. So the first one is I just want you to kind of take 30 seconds, and I'm not going to put a timer up or anything like that. I'm going to kind of talk you through it. But as we look through some of these pages, and what you'll notice too, you might have a couple other cards, which is kind of what we call these things here, a couple of other cards on your screen, because I've done a couple of the activities that I'll mention already with this account. So you might see a couple other ones on the screen, but generally speaking, depending on your grade, depending on what time of year, you might see different things pop up on this home page. Okay, so if you followed colleges, you'll see some messaging here. There's a way to apply to certain schools through SCOIR as well. There's links to discovering colleges. Different career or interest assessments are linked down here. You can scroll down and do some more search items. Events we'll talk briefly about is when colleges visit, for example. You can see when some colleges will be heading to our school. And then also take you back to some recently viewed colleges, maybe that you have accessed historically, so you can go jump right back in. Okay, so that's kind of a brief overview of just that general homepage, and things will look slightly different depending on the time of the year, what things have come up at school, as well as information that you've populated SCOIR with. And this tool is a tool that is useful from the get-go, but it gets more useful as you use it. So the more that you actually kind of like do some research, indicate that this is a school you're interested in, things like that, it gets smarter as it goes. So it can start recommending schools that are similar to your own interests or schools that you've started to show some interest in. All right, so at the top here, you'll notice there's a couple things. So we're going to walk through each of these different areas, okay, but we're actually going to go from left to right. So this is the application that's built within SCOIR. There's about a little less than 200 schools right now that are directly able to be applied through as a senior through SCOIR. So maybe by the time, if you're a younger grade, as years go by, they will continue to likely add stuff in here. This is not a big area of focus right now for us at North Tahoe High School, but it might be in the future, so just know that that's there. This area here actually is your profile and where we might indicate have you go look for some of the stuff. So there's a link directly to comparing colleges as well as visits and deadlines. So visits is again where those college visits come up. If schools say that they're going to come visit us, say at lunch or in a classroom, we try to add it to SCOIR so you can keep an eye on what that looks like. So if we click on it, it will have a list or a calendar of those things that you can see. Right now we don't have anything scheduled, so that's why it's showing no upcoming visits or deadlines. But under View Profile, if you click on that, you'll get some information about yourself. Okay, and it's always nice to check that this information is pretty accurate. Just note things like SAT scores, AP scores, GPAs may or may not be totally accurate. That's not a huge deal. We upload SATs when we get them, or AP or PSATs or different things like that. And then GPA is only updated maybe twice a year. So it's something that, if you had changes and it's only kind of semester GPAs, just know that this could be a little bit out of date potentially, but we do update it before we send out any information. You can start adding anything here. It helps to populate a resume actually. So if you wanted to add some personal information, add some activities here underneath your work experience, it's a nice place to keep track of your jobs, different things that can go into a resume item or college applications down the road, keeping track of how much time you're spending and what roles you're taking, say in clubs and activities. College preferences down here is where we can actually see some matches and start adding some areas of our college want list that are important to us. Okay, so if we hit Edit Preferences, it's going to let us kind of highlight a couple areas of academic focus, what type of degree we're looking for, personal interests. So we could say like, let's say culture. So if we said culture, if we said, let's see, I just put a PI in there. So piano, maybe I'm interested in playing the piano. Okay, so we can do some of that. Distance and location, so we can say from a place like our house. We could say certain states. I said California here. I'm going to go ahead and take that out just to kind of give us a broad look at it. Admissions rates, okay, so how many students are they admitting every year? What is an average test score, if that's an important thing for you? Campus setting, rural, so on and so forth. Sizes, athletics, ROTC, application info, and stuff like that. This helps populate our college suggestions, okay? And we can actually see matches here, but I'll show you another way to do that in a second. The careers area is actually, once you do a couple of these career assessments, there's two primary ones here. So there's a career interest assessment, and then there's also a Principal U assessment. This Principal U assessment is actually really valuable. However, I believe that most of the time we're asking students to wait until their junior year to actually do this. If you're in your junior year, work with your Pathways classes to do this. But if you're younger than that, we do encourage you to wait to do that. You can save careers, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, but this is a quick link to kind of like some of the careers that maybe you're interested in doing some more research into. And then you also have some drive elements. So this is where like the results from those assessments go. There might be some other files that get uploaded here, say by me or your teachers or things like that. Say a senior profile when you're a senior, stuff similar. Okay, so that's a brief overview of your profile, and it's just important to know you can actually, this is where you would be able to say download your resume. Going over to the left, though, we have an inbox. Okay, and so sometimes if you start following colleges, they can actually start sending you some messages. So like Cal Poly Humboldt sent me a message back in May, and it has a link to maybe get some information, connect with them, maybe attend an online info night, things like that. I can actually send some notifications and messages out as well about like upcoming events or things that you might need to know. But we also typically do that over email and on Google Classroom as well. So if you're not following this closely, don't stress too much about it. You will get the information you need from us. Now, the two things that I think are probably the more powerful areas is the My Colleges, and we're actually going to go over to Discover. Discover is where we're going to spend a little bit of time together today and actually have you do some stuff. So just to orient you to this page, so there are items up here, and many times when we're exploring SCOIR, these are kind of where the menu and different opportunities on each page live. It's kind of right underneath the search bar. So because we populated a couple of those items in our college searches, that in that preferences area of my profile, we're already going to have a couple matches probably. So if we click on this, it's going to actually say some information about what schools could potentially match some of these preferences that I entered here. Okay, so I think I just entered some random stuff. It says, and it can show you what it meets. Okay, so it says criminal justice, criminology, 4 years, culture, general private, not-for-profit, 5,000 to 10,000 students. Okay, and some schools will meet all of your preferences. Other schools might only meet, say, 5 of your preferences, and it will indicate that as well. Okay, if you go back to the For You, or this item at the top here, Colleges is also going to let us do another search similar to that preferences, but maybe let us do a little bit more tweaking of that as we want to do a little searching. So right below that, when we click Colleges, we have a couple of these filters. All right, so there's some key filters to start that many students start with, but if we click All Filters, it will actually let us do this. I'm going to go ahead and clear all of them, okay, and just walk you through. And then I'm going to actually pause and let you do a college search based on some of the stuff that you want to do. So if I wrote in something like business, what we're going to see is you have an academic focus, right? So we're going to actually be able to generally focus this, or we can actually find some very specific majors. Sometimes there's a very particular major that you're focused on finding, and that's okay. There's two things to note about our search tools. Okay, number one is sometimes when we are so specific or we add so many filters to our search, we can actually work ourselves out of results because sometimes we have such a specific need that it actually doesn't return like very many colleges at all. Okay, so sometimes it's actually better to maybe start a little broader and then focus up as you start seeing some of those results. There are 3,200 schools, you can see that up here, that are kind of in their database. And one thing also to note about this is it does include junior colleges. And then over the course of this school year, which is this school year as of the recording is 23-24, they are also adding a good number of trade and technical schools to this database as well. So as we continue to use this tool, you will notice that more trade and technical schools are going to start showing up. Okay, but if we just click, say, for example, the academic focus of business and say I want to get a 4-year bachelor's degree, maybe I'm not super focused on school size, so I'm not going to select something there, but maybe I want to live in the city. Maybe I want to get a shift from Tahoe. And maybe I'm not interested in like what area of the country I'm in, but maybe I would like to make sure it's test optional. Maybe testing isn't my thing. And then let's see. So let's scroll down, and maybe I want to have something like volleyball. So it has men's or women's. So let's say men's volleyball. Okay, and then they have also the division levels that you can also filter out by. And maybe we'll just use that. Okay, you can see down here that as you add things, it actually, so if we said Army, it will reduce that 72 to 44 and back again once we remove that. Okay, so you can see as you're adding filters, how many results you're going to be able to see. Okay, so let's click Show 72 Results. And then it's going to actually give us a list of all these different schools and programs that meet some of those needs. Now, you might know some of these schools, you might not. I've never heard of this particular university. And that's valuable stuff, right? So investigate the ones you've heard of, but also take some time and investigate maybe some that you haven't. You never, like I said, there's 32 schools on this tool. There's a lot of schools out there that you probably never even heard of that might be really great matches for you and maybe worthwhile to investigate. Okay. So I'm going to show you one last thing, and I'm going to take maybe a 5 or 10 minute break we're going to actually do a little bit of this work, and I want you to actually do a couple things with this. So first things first is when we click on the name of a school, if we go to Ohio State, I'm kind of a Michigan football fan, so boo Ohio State. But it gives you a profile, and so they actually do like kind of a little tour sometimes, or like a video, okay, which is kind of cool. So you can actually click on it and get some pretty detailed kind of information about the school or campus itself. Not every school is going to have that, but many of the larger ones will. All right, so that's a cool tool. They also have some at-a-glance items here. They also say where other students are actually kind of interested or following based on this school. So if you like this particular college, there's a decent chance you might want to investigate a couple of these other schools that many other students also are interested in. Has some basic items about the school itself, some cards, which the school actually populates to SCOIR, so you can actually get some information. It's kind of like a little bit of a social media feed. Some details, map information, if they have alternative campuses as well. And then as you see here, there are other information items that you can access. So like academics is one of them. Academics is probably a big one because most of the time in four-year college, you're going to be applying competitively to these schools. So you have a chance of potentially not getting into some programs. But it can show you some of the popular majors. It can show you a list of all the different areas of study, and then potentially like sub areas of study as well. You get a longer list of feed, their social media feed here. And then up at the top underneath, underneath admissions, this is not going to be something I can show you on this application because this is my fake son student, but you should be able to see this application scattergram. And this also shows you for schools that we've had a number of students apply to. This admissions data you see here under the admissions tab is helpful because you can see, okay, how many students are they accepting? How many are applying and how many are getting in? What's an average test score if I choose to test? They may or may not have access to like average GPA scores, but underneath the scattergram, when you click on that, that's actually North Tahoe High School students. Okay, so that's helpful to know from our students who graduated from North Tahoe High School who is getting in and who's maybe not. Okay, and you'll notice more students you'll see a lot more students if you looked up at UC or CSU. Our scattergram's pretty well populated. If you looked up Ohio State, we don't have a ton of students applying to Ohio State, so that scattergram's probably pretty small or empty. All right, so take a look at some of this information. Cost and aid is there too, so you can kind of see a little bit about net price, which means how much maybe potential income brackets might make or have to pay for going to school here. Information on student life that usually has information about clubs, breakdown of demographics, different things like that. And then two things that you can do with this, okay, which is what I'm going to ask you to do. If you find a school that you're like, hey, this is a school that I might want to do some more research in, okay, you're going to click this follow button. All right, and so it's going to ask you like, okay, so what helped me make, like, what was I interested in? Maybe it's the climate. I love Ohio, and maybe it was housing. Okay, so we hit save. That's now going to go into a place on this My Colleges tab, which I'll show you after we do our activity. But you can also do a compare feature, which is nice if you're looking at several different schools and want to kind of see what the differences are. So if you hit compare, we're going to go back to this college list. I'm going to get back there in a second. Right here. Okay, and so if I have this, it's over here on this right-hand side. So I've added that to compare, and you can actually do that from here as well. Maybe I'm going to look at UPenn as well. So add to compare, and let's do Drexel. Okay, now we can actually click this little tab. It's going to let us reorder if we want to remove or add up to 4, I believe, and then hit compare. And what this is going to do is this is going to let us look across the board at all the same metrics for each of these schools. Okay, and we kind of scroll down and kind of compare these different things of how, how big is their different business programs, for example? What are their student numbers? How is their gender diversity or ethnic diversity breakdown? You can also come in here and add some information that maybe you would like to see. Okay, so if you wanted to look at some information across the board, that's a nice way to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit pause. We're going to go to the Discover tab, and I'd like you to go to the college area up here, work on adding maybe 4 or 5 different filters that you're interested in, and then set a goal to maybe add 1 or 2 colleges that you would like to follow. And then we're going to come back and show you where to find that information. Ready, set, go. All right, so hopefully you're able to do a little bit of exploring in the colleges area. Just know that there are other things on here too. We're not going to spend time today to actually dive into it, but the careers tab very similarly has you actually be able to look up different careers. So if we use Principles U, if you're like, hey, I don't know what an actuary is, but I know it's related to finance, and it says it's got a bright outlook, which means like, hey, there's probably a lot of jobs coming, and it fits some of my character assessments. What you can do is you can actually click on it and start exploring some careers here. Okay, it has some interest, like areas that you maybe have skills or traits in, as well as similar careers, which is also nice. So like, maybe you don't want to be an actuary, but maybe you want to be an accountant and know what the difference is. Maybe you want to be a financial manager. And as, again, one of the things that this school, this SCOIR program will be doing over the course of this year as well, in addition to adding two-year trade school programs, is they're also going to be connecting these career areas to both college majors and schools that maybe are of interest, so colleges that could be of interest to you. Okay, so it does talk a little bit about, so an actuary will generally study like applied mathematics, statistics, business administration. There might be some specific majors, and then if you wanted to look for schools that have that major, you can just hit search colleges and it will show the various schools, and then you can also filter this list from there to break it down even further. Okay, but once you've added those areas that you're following, we're going to head over to this My Colleges tab, so you can follow along if you're not, and then you'll see underneath this tab here all the various schools that maybe you've started to follow. Okay, and this is a nice place to start keeping a list. So as you're developing, say, a level of college list, this is a nice place. Okay, and then I might even, say we're working together, we have a meeting, or Miss JC is having a meeting with you, we can actually make some suggestions based on this list, like, hey, did you think about this? And that could appear here as well. You also could be like, hey, you know what, I'm not interested in this program, so you can actually drag it over here. So say we suggest a school and you're like, yeah, that's not for me. There's actually a not interested list too. Okay, so it just kind of helps to make sure that we can follow along and help you along your journey. Okay, but this is a nice place to actually look at where you see yourself maybe potentially going, and also like what schools you might want to do. Once you've done that, as you approach senior year or into senior year, you can actually start dragging things around over to the applying, and then once you've considered your applying list, and once you've actually submitted applications, dragging it over to the applied list here. Okay, and it's really simple, dragging and dropping. It's going to ask you a couple potential questions, like if I'm applying, I'm going to apply on the college website, the priority deadline, and I'm going to apply test optional, and then it kind of shows up here. Once you've applied, it's going to ask you another set of questions over there and update things. You can also up here at the top hit top choices from your list. So if you're like, hey, you know what, these are all of my schools are top choice schools, which are really important. Okay, but I'm going to kind of create this like hierarchy list for myself. Okay, but it's also helpful for us who work with you to be able to know kind of like how things are falling around. Okay, so like if I got into every school, maybe Cal Poly Humboldt is the place that I see myself the most. All right, so that's a nice little tool here. You can actually sort things by deadlines, A to Z, how, like if it's a far reach or likely reach, okay, and your difficulty, and there's a number of different things. Okay, so I just wanted to show you where some of that list that we were populating actually shows up. So I encourage you to kind of explore SCOIR. We will ask you to use this in various ways throughout this, throughout your years of high school. Okay, but there's a lot of tools and resources and information available to you at your fingertips here. SCOIR is one tool that we use pretty heavily. There are other tools out there, so I encourage you to use multiple resources. If you're exploring, say, like College Board's Big Future or Peterson's College Search or different things like that, use multiple resources. It's really good to get information from many places. This is just one that we will be using here at the school, and I would encourage you to do that. The last thing I'll just mention, and hopefully you had a chance to explore this. If you have questions or had trouble, feel free to reach out to me, either myself or Miss JC. But we completely kind of walked around this area up here where you can actually search for things, okay? And it actually targets, you can go back to a recent search you had, but you can actually like search for, okay, what schools are test optional? And it will take you to some common search areas to maybe start a new college search. You can actually search for careers. Say I want to be an engineer. You can actually type that in and be able to pop some of that stuff in there. Okay, so I just want you to make sure that you know there are really cool ways to actually kind of do some tool searches for both colleges and careers, and it will take some time, but hopefully this provides a pretty simple and easy way to do that. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out, but hopefully this was helpful to get you at least introduced to SCOIR, have you use it a little bit, and go from there. All right, thank you for watching. Have a great day.